From the 1980s to the 1990s, the drug epidemic cost millions of lives and billions of dollars. The use of crack cocaine exploded on the streets of South Central Los Angeles, increasing violence and crime all over the city. The incarceration rate increased as the homicide rate grew exponentially. The decade of dreams actually began over 40 years ago with Pastor Tommy Barnett to reach the lost and broken of Los Angeles. This dream flowed over into a young man named Matthew Barnett.
It's not about us, it's about helping others while you hurt.
Who wanted to love and serve people who were hurting.
Jesus was the example of this. Whenever the pain was strongest in Jesus' life, he served the most.
Matthew noticed the old, vacant Queen of Angels Hospital in Echo Park, and he saw his father's dream could become a reality. This was only the beginning. Welcome to the Dream Center.
Hello, I'm Pastor Matthew Barnett of the Los Angeles Dream Center. I am standing on top of the roof here at this facility in downtown Los Angeles, the old Queen of Angels Hospital, where every day on this massive campus, hundreds of lives are being restored every single day. When I was 20 years of age, I came to LA and I thought I was going to be a traditional pastor, pastoring a traditional church and showing up on Sunday morning and doing the best I could to deliver messages to my crowd. But when I came to LA, I realized that God didn't call me to Los Angeles to be a pastor. He called me to be a city janitor, to walk through the streets of LA, to pick up broken pieces and tell people they can dream again. Well, in the last 23 years, we've seen it all. Homeless families, trafficking victims, broken lives, people from every possible situation, from living under the bridges of LA to living on Skid Row, come into the house of God and to see their life totally transformed on a day-by-day, hourly basis. And you are going to see today, once again, an incredible demonstration of what takes place in the lives of people as we move forward at the Dream Center. Jessica grew up in a Christian home. As a young girl, she attended church with her family and had many friends within the walls of her church. As she continued to grow into her teens, she was introduced to a new group of friends at school, and she found herself attracted to a lifestyle of parties. Going down a road of destruction and losing herself in addiction, she cried out to God, desperate for an answer. Here is Jessica's story.
My name is Jessica Van SURKSUM. I'm 27 years old. I grew up in a small town in Minnesota. For the most part, had a really good childhood. Had really good parents. They were very strict, but also very loving. When I got a little older, I started to rebel, walk away from God a little bit. For me and for my family, this was a big deal because all my siblings in my family were all very religious as well, and my dad was the worship leader at our church, so I just kind of had a little bit more higher expectations placed on me. About 16 years old, and I started hanging out with different friends from school, and they were partying and experimenting with mostly just drinking or smoking weed. And there was a couple times where I had snuck out of the house and went to a party. Coming home from school one day, and my dad just yelling at me, telling me to give him my phone and my keys, and I just started crying. I didn't know what was going on, and I saw my stepmom was like reading my diary. They found out that I had lost my virginity, and when they got to that part and they were reading, my dad just lost it. My dad, I was a daddy's girl. I had a really close relationship with him, and he had just given me this promise ring that I was supposed to wear on my ring finger as a promise between me and God, like a covenant that I was gonna wait until marriage to have sex. My dad was like, "Did you do it? Did you do it?" And like, I was just crying, and I was like, "Yeah." When I told him yes, like he slapped me in the face. He stormed off and drove away in his truck. And I remember my stepmom just looking at me and being like, "Well, you kind of deserve it." And just like taking on that shame and that guilt, and just felt so horrible, you know, in that moment. And from that point on, just everything changed. Like, my family never looked at me the same. They never treated me the same. My relationship with my dad was never the same after that. Everything just flipped over from underneath me. My friends were all my church friends, and none of them really wanted to hang out with me anymore. My dad even got fired from his position in the church because of me. I took that as God doesn't love me. God doesn't care about me. If I'm being rejected by my family and by my church, then that must mean that I'm being rejected by God as well. Just started hanging out with different people and made different friends and started partying even more, and just kind of walked out and forgot about God. I still tried to be like a good person, like in the world's terms. I went to school, and I went to cosmetology school, and I opened up a salon, just working out of my house, and built up clientele that way. And things were going pretty well for a while. I had also like fully committed myself, like that I was going to wait until marriage to have sex. A friend of mine invited me to a party, and I went that night. I shouldn't have gone, and I ended up being in the room alone with the wrong guy at the wrong time, and you can imagine, you know, what happened from there. For the first time in my life, I wondered if there even was a God, because I knew that God wouldn't have allowed that to happen to me. Now I was drinking all the time, experimenting with drugs, hanging out with even worse people, literally partying every single day, just completely in a downward spiral. I started dating this guy that I met at a party, and I had no idea at the time that he was a heroin addict. I shouldn't have been experimenting with drugs in the first place, but like, I never would have tried heroin if they told me that it was heroin. I went to California thinking I was gonna try to get sober by leaving the state. And so I came out here and I went to sober living in Huntington Beach. And within 10 days, I had already relapsed. There was another girl that was there in the sober living, and we relapsed together, and we got kicked out. And because I didn't know anyone in California, I had nowhere to go. So I ended up literally homeless in California. And I was just kind of like hanging out in this like secluded spot where I was just planning on just sleeping for the night. And this guy came up to me, and to this day, I swear that he was an angel. He came to me and he brought me a blanket and guided me to this place, and where I had slept for 17 days behind this Target. He gave me this blanket and he brought me there, and he helped me like carry all my stuff. And he was like, "You'll be a lot safer here." And there was just something sacred about this place. And in that moment too, like I felt like God was like protecting me and watching over me, even though I was in my addiction and I was making poor choices, that he was still there. I just felt like God's presence, and that he was there protecting me and guiding me and watching over me. I remember, again, like crying out to God towards the end of that 17-day span that I had lived there, and just asking him for help. Like I wanted to quit. Like I wanted to quit so bad, but I couldn't. Right after I was like crying out to God and asking him to like help me quit, the cops came back there, and they were like, "Do you realize this is illegal camping?" And so they arrested me. So then God answered my prayer through that, and I got sober by getting arrested. And while I was in jail, I was in a 2-person cell, and my roommate was a Christian. And so she would like wake me up in the morning. She'd be like, okay, it's time to read the Bible. And she just got me all excited about the Bible and God. I tried to make all the right decisions. I had my dad be there when I got out to pick me up. I was like, I need to stay clean. Like, I don't want to go back to this ever again. Like, I'm done. Like, I want nothing to do with this. And they mentioned to me about the Dream Center. And I'll never forget my stepmom saying something to me about how part of what they do at the Dream Center was going to Skid Row and ministering to people. And that's what like clicked right there. I knew that I didn't want to just get help myself. I wanted to be able to help others. So the intake coordinator went and checked with Brian Mays, who at the time was in charge of intake. And she came back and she told me that they decided that I could stay, and I was so happy. I started crying, just like praising God. My dad was there. He started crying. He was like, oh my gosh, I feel like you're gonna be a missionary. Like, I'll never forget him like looking up to the sky, crying. And God's just completely turned my life around from being here. My relationship with my family has been completely restored. I have a better relationship with them than I ever have before. My relationship with God is better than I ever had before, and I've been able to use everything from my past to help other people. God is in control. God has restored me to the point where I feel like it was almost just a dream, and it's all because of God. That is what it is about this program that makes it work, is that they bring you to God.
Every time I think about what God has done in Jessica's life, I'm blown away. He took a young woman who had grown up in church, then had fallen into the deepest, darkest pit of drugs. Not only did he pull her back from the wreckage, but restored her. He didn't stop there. God went on to use her by serving those in need and to help other people and to make a difference in the lives of so many others. Jessica's heart is open and willing to love on and lift others up, to help them see how Jesus is the greatest Redeemer of all and provides a purpose for our life. Please join us by calling in and supporting a young woman like Jessica. Every day I walk around this campus, I find people that are faced with impossible odds, overcome the odds. But the struggle they go through is very, very challenging. At the Dream Center, we have to walk people through where they are and where they need to be. And that journey is challenging, it's difficult, and many times we have to go through a lot of brokenness to get to the heart of the potential of someone and their future. Well, there's a young man named Pavel in this building that his life has been changed to such a radical level that I look at him and I say, I don't even know who you are anymore. Isn't that like in the disciples in the Bible where they were changed to such an incredible way? You didn't really recognize him anymore. When he came into this program, all you could see is brokenness in his life. At 13 years of age, he was involved with drugs for the first time and partying for the first time, and it led him to a dark place in his life. Matter of fact, so dark that you think, how can a young boy come back from this at 13 years of age? His story is one of the most unbelievable stories of the grace of God, and one of the most unbelievable stories of how far someone can come from and how far they can go. I want you to listen carefully to Pavel's story and hear the dramatic road that he's been on from a 13-year-old young boy who is against the odds to a man who's facing his future. Take a look.
My name is Pavel MELNICHUK. My childhood growing up was amazing. I had absolutely nothing to complain about. Mom and dad were very strong Christian parents. They came over from Ukraine at about 89, 88, and they held on to their faith, and they brought us up with great morals. They brought us up in church. We went to Sunday school, did the choir, did the whole thing, and for some reason, somewhere along the line, I began to lose interest in God. I began to lose interest in church. I had a brother. He was out and about doing things, hanging out with a difficult crowd, and stealing cars and doing drugs and all these different things. And for some reason, that side of life really, really caught my attention. I don't know what it was about it, but it looked exciting to me. And I was about 13 years old at a party, and for the first time, I tried ecstasy. And it was actually one of my brothers that dropped it off for me. And I remember in that moment, I felt like I found what I was looking for. And little did I know that that one pill was going to take my life in the craziest downward spiral. Within the next year, I started using meth, and it just opened up a difficult life to me, one with violence and stealing, and eventually I started selling drugs for the older guys, doing their bidding for them, and I thought I was, the coolest because I was selling drugs for them, I was making money for them, involved in a lot of violence, trying to earn respect and be somebody on the streets was something that I thought was cool at the time. Did that for a very long time. I was selling Oxycontin and heroin, and eventually got addicted to heroin, and it tore my life apart, and it completely just swept me off my feet. Began to lie to family, cheat and steal, and hurt everybody around me, everybody that was trying to help me, everybody that was trying to care for me. And I felt as if I was beyond the point of return. I grew up with God in my family, so I knew there was a God, but I felt like he didn't want anything to do with me because I was so far off, I was so far gone. Every day for, I don't know, I think it was like 4 years, used heroin. Oxycontin turned into heroin because it was cheaper. And by that time, when I realized that this is just, it's going too far, wasting all my money, and I tried to come off of it, there was absolutely no way I could. Within 12 to 16 hours, my body would start going through intense withdrawal, and I would literally, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I couldn't do anything. That's the only thing that I was thinking about, was like, how do I get my next fix? How do I get high again? And that had me, bound hands and feet. I couldn't get myself out of it. And I actually started believing this is who I am. I'm a drug addict. I'm a menace to society, and this is all I am, and this is all I'm going to become. And growing up, you see the movies, you hear the stories from back in Ukraine, the Ukrainian mobsters, the tough guys, the big bad guys, that for some weird reason, that's what we wanted to be. And we had friends that we grew up with, since we were kids, and we had our crew of guys that we did everything together with. We partied, we stole, we did drugs, we fought with. Anytime anybody had an issue, we'd go take care of it. And I thought that's what I wanted. In the middle of the, in the heat of the moment, when you take care of an issue for a buddy or he does something for you, it's like, all right, we're together forever. Live and die together, do drugs together. We're going to be together for the rest of our lives. But reality started to set in. Friends built off of drugs, violence, and money don't last very long. And when things started to fall apart there, that's when I started to realize people were getting locked up. I had one of my best friends, he kept getting locked up, and I started realizing where it's like that's not really what I wanted. It wasn't as glamorous as it looked from the outside, from the surface. And I started to separate myself from those people after a while. A lot of them are in jail. Some of them are dead. When I first made the decision to quit and go to an NA program, it was mainly for family. My parents have been going through hell since I can remember, one drug addict after another. My parents were super excited, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do this for my parents, I'm gonna do this for my family, I'm actually gonna try to stay clean. And I made that decision, and I went to a 30-day program. They gave me, they prescribed me Suboxone and Subutex to help for the withdrawal. And I did it. I completed the 30-day program. I got out, and I told myself, I'm not gonna go around the same friends. I'm not gonna, go out and get high. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get a job. I'm gonna start working. I'm gonna, make an honest living and try to do this right. And I was clean for 8 months. And I still remember this day so vividly. It was a difficult day at work, was what it was. My coworker was talking a lot, and he was calling me a drug addict and a fiend, and I had not been doing drugs at this time. And it was just emotionally stressful, which it almost sounds petty and small, but in my eyes, I was dealing with an emotional crisis, and I was doing it on my own. And that day after work, I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna go see my friend. And it was just that one time I went to go see my friend. We picked up a sack of heroin, and it was back out of grab my heroin a day in the next week or two. Before I even knew it, I started off with $20 for 2 days, getting high to $100 a day. Within a week or two, it was just instantly, and I was right back to where I started. That 8 months of being clean was gone in snap of a finger, in half a second. And I found myself in that same downward spiral, helpless, hopeless, not seeing myself getting out of it or moving forward. When I had relapsed, my brother actually come to this program, my brother Andre, and our relationship was so bad that I pretty much told him, he was like, hey, I'm gonna go to a program, I wanna change my life around. And I was like, you know what, Deuces, do your thing, I don't really care what you do with your life. And he came here, and when I was going through hell at home, I lost my job, stopped working there because I was nodding out with power tools. I was a heroin addict. And I just started doing whatever I was doing before to get high. And I reached a point where it was like, man, it's getting really, really old. And the first person that I had thought about was Andre. I came to see him before, and it was the greatest thing. When I first walked out of the car to see him, what I remember is our relationship in the middle of our drug addiction, where we hated each other and we would fight. Anytime we just made contact, we would fight. And so 3 months into his recovery program, when I came to see him, it completely threw me for a spin when he saw me and I first made contact with him, because he had nothing but the biggest smile on his face. It's like all the hell that we've been through, all the hell that I put him through, it was all forgotten and forgiven. And the genuineness of the change and love that he had when I made contact with him the very first time was what pushed me in the direction to make that decision to come to the Dream Center. I didn't honestly know what to expect. I came here expecting to be at a desk, to not talk to anybody, to be stuck at your desk in your Bible, nose down, and doing absolutely nothing else. Everybody was so excited, everybody was so happy, everybody had a smile on their face and just loved God. And instantly that was like, okay, well, that kind of threw me off guard. I'm not used to the environment where everybody's welcoming. And so I remember I read a simple prayer before I opened up my Bible, and I pretty much, I was like, just God, I'm willing to give you everything. I'm willing to give it all. But I need to know that you're real. I need to know that you're here. I need to know that you're listening. And it was, I still remember to this day, I was sitting in a little hallway away from everybody else. Everybody was watching a movie, and I opened up my Bible, and it was just Matthew. No specific scripture that stuck out to me. I just started reading, and I was about a chapter into it, and I just broke down. It was like the biggest God moment I've ever had, and I freaked out. And right there in that moment, I made a decision that I'm gonna give it everything. And the struggle still came, just because you make that decision to follow God and give him your life doesn't mean all your problems go away. I had a lot of difficult days, but I continued to stay committed to the process, continued to be obedient, trusting in what the discipleship had to offer. And it didn't steer me wrong one bit. So it was about 5 months into my program, I was put in a leadership position where I got to pour out and encourage people, and that just continued to just blow my mind. I got to talk to people that I would have never talked to off the street, interact with people and cry and pray with people that I would have never just be near these people. And God really began to work in my life in that area and started to take all the filth out, all the negative thoughts, all the judgment. And that was my next 6 months, pretty much till the end of my program. I was an RA and put in a leadership position, and I took pride in being an example. And so staying for a second year gave me an opportunity to work on myself, go to school and become an EMT, continue to seek after God, had a roof over my head, had food provided for me. It lifted 1,000 pounds off of my shoulders. I wasn't doing this alone. I had people standing, behind me and encouraging me for that whole second year, and I was able to complete school, and I did well in school, something that I thought was impossible. My first day at work, we had somebody go into a full arrest, and I used to be creating the chaos. I used to be ruining people's lives and bringing hell into people's lives. But now I have an opportunity to do the complete opposite. Being on the other side of that is humbling in every way, and I'm not ever going to lose sight of that. Coming here to the Dream Center, I wanted to have hope, and I came here hoping, but really in my heart, I was hopeless. I was lifeless. I felt like everything bad in this world is going to continue happening to me, like I couldn't get out of this deep and dark hole, and never in a million years would I have thought that in 3 years I would be on the other side of things. The people here, the environment here, God here, and what they have going on here truly is real, and it's supernatural. Something that can't be explained, something that can't be understood from the exterior, but if you give it a chance, if you give it a shot, and you allow God to work into your heart, miracles will happen. Just as miracles have happened in my life in the last 3 years, so will miracles happen in your lives, regardless of the mistakes, regardless of the past, regardless of how many times you've fallen and gotten back up and fallen and gotten back up. We've been there and we've done that. The greatest part is that we're doing this together, and so we're able to hold one another up. You wouldn't regret one moment of it. Is it difficult? Anything in life that's good is. But is it worth it? 100%.
Will you join us today to help bring young women and men back to God? Will you help the Dream Center continue to celebrate the ones that have been lost but now are found and pursue a new life with Jesus? We can't do without you. Help be the change by supporting the Dream Center. And when you do, you are providing shelter, counseling, mentoring, education, and above all, Jesus to so many in need. Your support and prayers have made it possible for Jessica and many others to get another chance at life. You help make it possible for us to serve 24/7. Please consider partnering with the Dream Center, becoming a dedicated supporter of our organization, changing lives, restoring the broken. In fact, we'd love for you to come to our campus and see all of these changed lives. They're here every day, all the time. If you give a gift today of $50 or more, we will send you my book, God's Dream for You. Thank you for your support. Thank you for watching. Please join us next week for another powerful story of hope and restoration. You will continue to see how your support impacts the lives of so many people. Come and see what God is doing right here at the Dream Center.